Commander Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The numbers made no sense. His small ship, the Horizon, had been mapping stars for 3 months. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Now the sensors were going crazy. "What? Am I looking at Pete?" Jake asked his navigation officer. Pete Collins wiped sweat from his forehead.
Yes.
"There's something big happening on the 4th planet. Energy readings are off the charts. It's like someone is fighting a war down there." Jake looked around the bridge of his ship. 12 people made up his entire crew. They were scientists, not soldiers. Their job was to study new worlds and make maps. They carried no big weapons. The Horizon was a research ship, not a warship. "Show me the planet," Jake said. The main screen lit up with an image that took Jake's breath away. The 4th planet looked like a giant jewel floating in space. Huge crystal formations grew out from the planet's surface. They sparkled in the light of the twin suns. Some crystals were as big as cities. Others stretched out for hundreds of miles. "Beautiful," whispered Dr. Lisa Hayes from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien life. "I've never seen anything like it." "Look closer," Pete said. He zoomed in on one area of the planet. Jake saw it then. Black ships, shaped like wedges, were attacking the crystal formations. Bright beams of energy shot from the ships. Where the beams hit, the crystals melted and turned to liquid. Chunks of molten crystal fell toward the planet like burning rain. "Hey, those are Keth ships," said Dan. Parker. He was the ship's security chief. "I recognized the design. Bad news, boss. Keth are machine people. They don't think like us. They only want one thing." "What's that?" Jake asked. "Brains," Dan said. "They harvest thinking minds to power their computers. If they're here, it means they found something with a really good brain." Amy Watson, the chief engineer, looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of signal from the planet. It's not like anything in our database." "Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with a sound like singing mixed with crying. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. The sound seemed to go right through Jake's chest and into his heart. Dr. Hayes stood up quickly. "That's not just a signal, that's a voice. Something down there is trying to talk. Can you understand it?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her station for several minutes. "I can try to match the frequency patterns. Give me a few more minutes." While Lisa worked, Jake watched the battle on the screen. 3 large Keth ships were attacking one particular crystal formation. This crystal was bigger than the others and seemed to glow from inside. The Keth ships fired their weapons over and over. Each hit made the crystal flash brighter. "Got it," Lisa said suddenly. "I can translate some of it. Listen to this." The singing voice became words that everyone could understand. It was clearly female and filled with pain and fear.
"Oh.
My strength grows weak. The metal ones come for my children. I cannot hold them back much longer. My babies, ... my poor babies." The bridge went quiet. Everyone stared at the screen. "There's someone down there with kids," Amy said softly. "And those Keth things are trying to get them." Ouch. He had a little girl back on Earth. The thought of her being in danger made him angry and scared at the same time. "Lisa, can you talk back to whoever that is?" he asked. "I think so. Let me try." Lisa worked with her equipment for a moment. "Ain't." Then she spoke into her microphone. "Hello, this is Dr. Lisa Hayes from the human ship Horizon. I can hear you. What is your name?" The answer came back immediately. You ... you are not metal ones. Have warm thoughts, living minds. Yes, we're alive. We're humans. What's your name?" "I am called Azareth. I am the last guardian of this nest. The metal ones seek my young for their minds, will take my children and put their thoughts into machines. I try to protect them, but I grow tired." Jake moved closer to Lisa's station. "Tell her we want to help." Lisa spoke into the microphone. "Azareth, we want to help you and your children. What are you? What do the Keth want with your young?" "I am what your language might call dragon. We are old beings who live among the crystals. We think with our minds alone, moving things without touching them. The metal ones know this. They want to cut out our thinking parts and use them to make their machines smarter. Don Parker shook his head. Boss, this is bad. The Keth don't usually attack unless they're sure they can win. If they brought 3 warships, this dragon and her kids don't stand a chance. Many young does she have? Jake asked Lisa. Lisa asked the question and waited for the answer. 3 children. They're still babies, not old enough to defend themselves. Jake looked at his crew. 12 people on a small research ship. No big weapons. No armor. No chance against 3 Keth warships that could blow them to pieces without. Trying, Captain, Amy said quietly. We should probably leave. There's nothing we can do here. The Keth will kill us if we get involved. Jake knew Amy was right. The smart thing would be to run. Get back to human space and report what they saw. Let someone else handle it. Someone with bigger ships and more weapons. But Jake kept thinking about the voice of Azurith, to fear in her words when she talked about her children. He thought about his own daughter, safe in her bed on Earth. What would he want someone to do if she was in danger? Pete, how long before those Keth ships break through to where the young dragons are hiding? Jake asked. Pete studied his instruments. At the rate they're going, maybe 6 hours? Out. The outer crystal shell is thick, but it's melting fast. 6 hours, Jake repeated. He looked around at his crew again. They were good people. Scientists who wanted to learn about the universe. They had families back home. None of them signed up to fight alien war machines. Boss Dan said, I know what you're thinking, but we can't take on 3 Keth warships. We'll all die in those. Dragon kids will still get captured. Jake nodded. Don was probably right. Don. But something inside Jake wouldn't let him give up. Maybe it was because he was a father. Maybe it was because he joined the space service to help people. Or maybe it was just because walking away felt wrong, Lisa asked. Azura something for me, Jake said. What? Ask her if there's any way we can help. Maybe we can't fight the Keth, but maybe there's something else we can do. Lisa asked the question. The answer came back quickly. She says her power comes from connecting with other living minds. The more minds she can link with, the stronger she becomes. But her own people are all gone now. She's alone, except for her children, and they're too young to help much. What about us? Jake asked. Could she link with human minds? Lisa asked and waited. When the answer came, her eyes went wide. She says she's never tried with humans before. Our minds feel different to her, wilder, more full of feeling. She doesn't know if it would work, but she's willing to try anything to save her children. Jake made his decision. Amy, can you modify our communication system to boost our brain? Signals. Amy looked scared but determined. I can try, Captain. Give me an hour. You've got it. Dan, what weapons do we have? Mining charges for blasting asteroids, some small defense lasers. Nothing that would scratch a Keth warship. It'll have to. Do, Pete! Plot us a course to the planet. Use the crystal formations to hide us from their sensors. Boss Dan said, This is crazy. We're going to get killed. Jake looked at his friend and security chief. Maybe, but those are kids down there, Dan. Kids with a mother who can't protect them anymore. What kind of people would we be if we just flew away? Dan was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. The kind who live longer, probably. But you're right, boss. Let's go save some dragon babies. The crew of the Horizon prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. They were just 12 humans in a small ship, going up against an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. They had almost no weapons and no real plan. But they had something the Keth machines didn't understand. They had hearts that couldn't stand to see children suffer. And sometimes, that was enough. The Horizon moved through space toward the crystal planet. Jake Morrison watched the Keth warships on his screen. Each one was 10 times bigger than his small research ship. Their black holes were covered with weapons and armor. It looked like giant metal sharks hunting in the void. Amy, how's that communication boost coming along? Jake asked his chief engineer. Amy Watson wiped grease from her hands. She had been working on the ship's systems for 2 hours. Almost done, Captain. But I have to warn you, this is all guesswork. I'm trying to make our communication array amplify human brainwaves. I've never done anything like this before. What's the worst that could happen? Jake asked, Amy looked worried. Best case is nothing happens. Worst case, we could fry everyone's brain when we turn it on. Dr. Lisa Hayes looked up from her station. I've been talking more with Azareth. She explained how her people's minds work. Dragons think with what she calls quiet pools of thought, very calm and organized. She says human minds feel totally different to her. Different how? Jake asked. She says we think like fire, wild and bright and always moving. She's never felt anything like it before. Dan Parker checked his small collection of weapons one more time. 6 mining charges meant for blasting rocks. A few handheld energy weapons, some basic tools that might work as weapons if they got desperate. Boss, I've been thinking about this. We can't fight the Keth ships directly. They would blow us apart before we got close. What do you suggest? Jake asked. Hit and run. Use the crystals for cover. Fast and sneaky. Make them chase us while Azoreth does whatever dragon magic she needs to do. Pete Collins, the navigation officer, studied the planet's crystal formations. I can map us a path through the bigger crystals. The Keth ships are too big to follow us into the tight spaces, but it'll be dangerous. One wrong turn and we'll crash. Nodded. Do it. How much time do we have left? Pete checked his instruments. 4 hours before they break through to the dragon nest? On the main screen, the Keth drilling platforms kept working. Giant machines the size of buildings hung in space above the crystal formation where Azirith hid. Energy beams shot down continuously, melting through layer after layer of crystal. The molten rock floated away like glowing tears. Lisa suddenly sat up straight. Captain Azareth is trying to show me something. She's sending me images. What kind of images? Lisa closed her eyes and concentrated. I can see inside the crystal formation. There's a huge hollow space deep in the center. That's where she is with her children. The image appeared on the main screen. Everyone on the bridge could see it. Now, a beautiful cavern made entirely of crystal. The walls sparkled with their own light. In the center, a magnificent creature waited. Azareth was bigger than Jake had imagined. Her body was easily 100 feet long, covered in scales that looked like living crystal. Her wings were folded against her sides, and her long neck curved, protectively around 3 much smaller shapes. The baby dragons were each about the size of a human fighter ship. Their scales were softer than their mothers, more like colored glass. They huddled close to Azareth, clearly scared. They're beautiful, Amy whispered, and they're in trouble, Dan added. Look at the mother. Jake could see what Dan meant. Azirith's. Crystal scales were dim and faded. Her head drooped with exhaustion. Around the cavern, cracks were appearing in the crystal walls as the Keth drilling got closer. She's dying, Lisa said softly. Using her power to protect the nest is killing her. She can't keep it up much longer. Jake felt anger burn in his chest. These were peaceful creatures living in their home. They weren't hurting anyone. Keth wanted to murder children just to steal their brains from machines. Not if I can help. Jake said. Amy, is that communication booster ready? Ready as it's going to be, Captain? But I still don't know what will happen when we turn it on. Only one way to find out. Lisa, tell Azirith we're going to try to connect with her mind. Warn her that human thoughts might feel strange. Lisa spoke into her microphone. The answer came back quickly. She says she's willing to try anything. She can feel her strength failing. Jake looked around at his crew. 12 people who had signed up to study stars and map new worlds. Now, they were about to risk their lives for alien children they had never met. Everyone, listen up, Jake said. We're going to try something that's never been done before. We're going to link our minds with a dragon. I don't know what it will. Feel like I don't know if it will work. We're going to try. Bob Martinez, one of the younger crew members, raised his hand. Captain, what if it hurts? What if we lose our minds? Jake looked at the screen showing the baby dragons huddled against their dying mother. Then we lose our minds trying to save children. I can live with that. Turn it on, Amy, Jake ordered. Amy's hand hesitated over the control switch. Then she flipped it. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Jake felt his mind suddenly expand beyond his own head. could sense the thoughts and feelings of his entire crew. Amy's worry about the equipment, Dan's determination to fight, Lisa's excitement about making contact with an alien mind, Pete's concentration on flying the ship, but underneath all the human thoughts was something else, something vast and ancient and tired. Azirath's mind touched theirs like a gentle giant trying not to step on insects. The dragon's mental voice filled their heads. Your minds burn so bright. How do you think with such fire and not be consumed? Jake tried to answer with his thoughts instead of his voice. We don't know any other way to think. It's just how humans are. So much emotion, so much feeling. You care about my children, though. You have never seen them before. Why? The answer came not from Jake alone, but from his entire crew. A flood of human memories and feelings. Katie Bell thinking about her little sister. Bob Martinez remembering his nephew's first steps. Don Parker thinking about all the children he had helped protect during his career. The message was clear. Humans protected children. All children. Even alien dragon children they had just learned about. Azirath's amazement filled their minds. I have lived for thousands of years, but I have never felt such fierce love for strangers. Your species confuses me, but your hearts are true. Suddenly, Jake felt power flowing through the mental link. Not his power, but something from Azirath. Her strength was growing. Crystal walls around her nest began to glow brighter. It's working, Lisa shouted out loud. The connection is making her stronger. On the screen, they could see the change. Azirath lifted her head higher. Her scales began to sparkle with renewed energy. The cracks in the crystal walls started to heal themselves. But the Keth had noticed the change too. Alarms began sounding on their ships. The drilling platforms increased their power, pouring more energy into melting the crystal barrier. No, something's different, Dan said. They're going to break through faster now. Pete checked his readings. 2 hours, maybe less. Jake made a decision. We're going in. Pete, take us into the crystal field. Use the formations for cover. Dan, get ready with those mining charges. Boss, what's the plan? Dan asked. We're going to be as annoying as possible. Hit their drilling platforms. Make them chase us. Give Azirath time to get her strength back. The horizon dove toward the planet. The crystal formations grew larger and larger as they got closer. Soon they were flying between crystal spires that stretched for miles in every direction. Keth fighters launching, Pete reported. 6 of them coming our way. The enemy fighters were small but deadly. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy the horizon. They moved in perfect formation, like a pack of metal wolves. Here they come, Dan said. Everyone hang on. Pete threw the ship into a spinning dive between 2 massive crystals. The Keth fighters followed, but they were too big to maneuver in the tight spaces. One of them clipped a crystal formation and exploded in a burst of flame. Got one. Pete shouted, but there were still 5 left, and more were launching from the main ships. Jake felt sweat running down his face. They couldn't run forever. That's when something unexpected happened. Through the mental link with Azirath, Jake felt her attention focus on the Keth fighters. Suddenly, the crystal formations around them began to move. Giant spears of crystal grew out from the formations like massive spikes. They moved too fast for the Keth fighters to dodge. 2 more enemy ships were caught and crushed. The dragon is helping us fight? Amy said in amazement. Jake felt Azirath's thoughts in his mind. Your courage gives me strength, little fire minds. Together we will protect the young. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time since they arrived, Jake thought they might actually have a chance. The horizon twisted and turned through the crystal maze like a fish swimming through coral. Behind them, 3 more Keth fighters gave chase. Their weapons fired bright beams of energy that missed the human ship by inches. Left turn coming up, Pete Collins shouted as he threw the ship into a sharp bank around a crystal spire the size of a mountain. Jake Morrison held onto his chair as the ship spun. Through the mental link with Azirath, he could feel the dragon's growing strength. He could also feel something else. The baby dragons were scared and getting more frightened as the battle went on. Lisa, can you talk to the young ones? Jake asked Dr. Hayes. Lisa concentrated on the mental connection. I'm trying, Captain. There. So afraid, the sound of the weapons and explosions is terrifying them. Katie Bell, the youngest member of the crew, suddenly spoke up. Let me try. I'm good with scared kids. Jake looked at the 24-year-old communication specialist. Katie was barely out of school, but she had 3 younger brothers back. Home, go ahead, Katie. Katie closed her eyes and focused on the mental link. Instead of trying to talk with words, she sent a feeling. The warm, safe feeling of being hugged by someone who cared. The feeling of a big sister telling a little brother that everything would be okay. The effect was immediate. Through Azirath's eyes, they could see the 3 baby dragons lift their heads. Their fear didn't go away. But now it was mixed with curiosity. These strange, fire-minded creatures cared about them. It's working, Lisa said with wonder. The young ones are responding to Katie. Azirath's mental voice filled their heads with amazement. My children have never felt such warmth from strangers. Your Katie mind burns with protective love like a mother's heart. Katie smiled even as tears ran down her face. Tell them we won't let the bad machines hurt them. But the Keth weren't giving up. More fighters poured out of the main ships. Worse, the drilling platforms had increased their power again. The outer layers of crystal around the dragon nest were melting faster than ever. Dan, we need to hit those. Drilling platforms, Jake said. Dan Parker nodded. I've got the mining charges ready, but we'll have to get close. Real close. How close? Pete asked. Close enough to see the rivets on their hulls. Pete whistled low. That's suicide range. Those platforms have defensive weapons. Then we better be too fast for them to hit, Jake said. Take us in, Pete. The horizon burst out of the crystal field like a rocket. Ahead of them, the massive Keth drilling platform hung in space like a metal city. Energy beams poured from its bottom, melting through the crystal barrier, protecting Azirath's nest. Defensive guns are locking onto us, Dan reported. Incoming fire in 5 seconds. 4, 3. Pete threw the ship into a corkscrew spin that would have made a stunt. Pilot-proud energy beams flashed past them, missing by feet. 2. 1. Hang on. Don shouted as he fired the first mining charge. The explosion bloomed against the drilling. Platform's hull like a flower made of fire. The platform shook, but kept working. Its energy beam flickered, but didn't stop. We barely scratched it. Martinez called out. That's when Jake felt Azirath focus her attention on their attack. Suddenly, the small explosion from the mining charge became something much bigger. The dragon's power amplified the blast, turning a tiny firecracker into a bomb that tore a hole in the platform's side. She's boosting our weapons, Amy Watson shouted in excitement. The drilling platform's energy beam cut off as systems failed. Inside the damaged machine, but there were still 2 more platforms working on the crystal barrier. Next target, Jake ordered. The second attack went even better. This time Azirath was ready. The moment Dan's mining charge hit the platform, dragon power turned it into an explosion that split the machine in half. Pieces of metal rained down toward the planet's surface, but the third platform was ready for them. As the horizon approached, defensive weapons opened fire from every angle. Pete flew like a madman, but there were too many guns. We can't get close enough, he yelled. That's when something beautiful happened. Through the mental link, Jake felt the baby dragons reaching out with their own power. They were young, and their abilities were weak, but they wanted to help the brave fireminds who were trying to save them. The smallest dragon, the one Katie had been comforting, sent out a pulse of energy that made the third drilling platforms. Targeting computers go crazy, the defensive weapons started firing in empty space while the horizon flew right past them. Dan's third mining charge, boosted by both mother and children, turned the last drilling platform into scrap metal. All drilling platforms destroyed, Pete reported, but their celebration was short. The main Keth warships were moving now. 3 massive vessels that could crush the horizon without trying. They're coming for us, Dan said grimly. We're out of mining charges. Jake felt despair creeping into his thoughts. They had bought some time, but it wouldn't be enough. The Keth could just send more drilling platforms. Or they could blast through the crystal barrier with their main weapons. That's when Azureth surprised them all. Little fire mines. Her voice filled their heads. You have given me a gift I did not expect. Your emotions burn so bright that they light up my tired old heart. But more than that, you have shown my children what courage looks like. Through the mental link, Jake could see what was happening in the crystal nest. The 3 baby dragons were no longer huddled in fear. They stood beside their mother, their young scales beginning to glow with power. They want to fight? Lisa asked in amazement. They want to protect the fire mines who came to save them, Azureth replied. My children are learning that sometimes you must be brave even when you are afraid. The youngest dragon, the one Katie had comforted, sent a direct thought to the human crew. Her mental voice was high and sweet like a child's, but determined. You came when Mama called for help. Now we help you. Jake felt his heart swell with pride and worry at the same time. These were children, even if they were alien dragon children. But they wanted to help, and Jake understood that feeling. What can they do? He asked Azureth. Watch and see, brave captain.
Oh.
The crystal formations around the planet began to change. What had been simple spires and formations started to move and reshape themselves. The baby dragons were learning to use their powers by copying their mother. But their young minds thought differently, where Azureth created barriers and shields. Her children made art, crystal formations twisted into beautiful spirals and flowers. But these pretty shapes had sharp edges and surprising strength. The first Keth warship ran straight into what looked like a crystal rose the size of a city block. The pretty flower was actually harder than steel and had razor-sharp petals. Warship's hull was cut open like paper. Did you see that? Amy laughed with delight. They're turning the whole crystal field into weapons. But beautiful weapons. The second Keth ship tried to blast its way through a crystal formation that looked like a giant butterfly. But when the energy beams hit it, the butterfly's wings folded around the ship and trapped it like a fly in amber. Jake felt amazement. Flowing through the mental link from all the humans, they were watching alien children discover their own power, and it was the most wonderful and terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. The third Keth warship stopped moving. Its computers couldn't understand what they were seeing. The databases had no information about crystal formations that moved like living things and fought like works of art. Retreat signal, Dawn reported. The Keth are pulling back, but Jake could feel through the mental link that this was just the beginning. The Keth wouldn't give up. They would bring bigger ships and more weapons. The battle was far from over. Jake said through the mental connection, they'll be back, and they'll bring everything they have. I know, brave captain. But now I have something I did not have before. What's that? Hope, and friends who burn like stars. The youngest dragon sent Katie another direct thought. Thank you for showing us how to be brave, Fire Sister. Katie wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you for being so strong, little star. The war for the dragon nest was just beginning, but now both sides knew they were in for the fight of their lives. The quiet didn't last long. Jake Morrison watched his sensors as more Keth ships appeared at the edge of the star system. Not 3 this time, not even 10. 20 massive warships were coming toward the crystal planet, along with dozens of smaller fighters and new drilling machines. They're bringing everything they have, Dan Parker said quietly. Boss, I don't think we can fight that many ships. Through the mental link with Azureth, Jake felt the dragon's worry. She was stronger now thanks to the human connection, but even dragon power had limits. 20 warships carried enough firepower to crack the planet in half. How long before they get here? Jake asked Pete Collins. 2 hours? Maybe less. They're coming in fast. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. 12 people who had already done the impossible. They had helped a dragon family fight off the first attack. But this next wave would be much worse. Captain Amy Watson said from her engineering station, I've been thinking about our communication link with the dragons. What if we could make it stronger? How? Jake asked. Well, right now, we're boosting human thoughts to reach Azureth. But what if we could connect directly with the baby dragons too? Create a network instead of just a single link. Dr. Lisa Hayes looked excited. That could work. The young dragons are already trying to connect with us. I can feel them reaching out through their mother's link. Katie Bell, who had formed the strongest bond with the youngest dragon, suddenly sat up straight. She's trying to tell me something, the little one. She says there are others. Others what? Jake asked out Katie. Closed her eyes and concentrated on the mental connection.
Yet.
Hidden in different crystal formations around the planet, Azereth isn't the only one left. She just thought she was. The bridge went silent. Through the link with Azereth, they felt the dragon's shock and hope at the same time. My people, Azereth's mental voice whispered. I thought the Keth had killed them all, my children. Can you sense them? The three baby dragons reached out with their growing powers. Even across the vast crystal planet, they could feel other dragon minds. Scared, hiding, alone, but alive. 12 families, the middle child. Reported 37 dragons total, all hiding in deep crystal caves. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. Azereth, can you contact them? Tell them what's happening? I will try, brave captain. But they have been hiding for so long, they may not trust easily. Amy worked frantically to modify the communication system again. If I can boost our signal enough, we might be able to connect with all the dragons at once, create one big network of minds. Do it, Jake ordered. While Amy worked, the crew of the Horizon felt the baby dragons reaching out across the planet. Their young voices called to the hidden families in the dragon language of pure thought and emotion. Come out, come out. Duh. Fire minds are here to help. They fight the metal ones with us. The response was immediate but cautious. Other adult dragon voices touched their minds, full of questions and fear. Who are these fire minds? Why do they help us? What do they want? Azereth answered. For the humans. They are called humans. They came from the stars when they heard my children in danger. They ask for nothing. They fight simply because it is right. An older dragon voice, tired and wise, spoke to Jake directly. I am Crystaleth, eldest of the survivors. Young Firemind Captain, why do your people risk death? For strangers? Jake answered honestly. Because you have children. Because they're in danger. Because we couldn't live with ourselves if we flew away and let them get hurt. The answer seemed to puzzle the dragons. Another voice, younger and angrier, spoke up. The metal ones have hunted us for years. They killed most of our kind. Should we trust any strangers now? This time it was Katie who answered. Through her connection with the youngest dragon, she sent not words, but feelings. The memory of holding her baby brother when he was sick. The fierce love that made her ready to fight anything that threatened her family. The simple truth that children everywhere deserved protection. The angry dragon's voice softened. Your emotions burn so bright. You truly care for young ones you have never seen. Ready? Amy announced. New communication network is online. But fair warning, this is going to feel very different. Turn it on, Jake said. The change was overwhelming. Suddenly, Jake's mind was connected not just to his crew and Azereth's family, but to 37 dragons scattered across the planet. It was like trying to listen to a dozen conversations at once while feeling the emotions of everyone involved. But gradually, chaos settled into something beautiful. The dragon minds formed a network of shared thoughts and feelings. And at the center of it all, the 12 human minds burned like small suns, their emotions giving strength to every dragon they touched. Incredible, breathed Crystaleth. Have not felt such power since the old days when our people numbered in the thousands. The youngest dragon's excitement filled the network. Look what we can do now. Across the planet, crystal formations began to change. But this time it wasn't just Azereth's family creating art weapons. 37 dragons working together turned the entire crystal field into something that had never existed before. Bridges of crystal grew between formations. Towers twisted into impossible spirals. Gardens of crystal flowers bloomed in the vacuum of space. The whole planet became a work of art that could think and move and fight. It's beautiful, Lisa whispered, but Jake was watching his sensors. It's about to be tested. The Keth fleet just entered the crystal field. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 20 Keth warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, found themselves fighting an entire planet that had come alive. Crystal formations reached out like giant hands to grab ships. Bridges became catapults that hurled chunks of rock at enemy vessels. The beautiful flower gardens revealed thorns sharp enough to cut through armor plating. But the dragons weren't the only ones fighting. The human crew of the Horizon had an idea that only their wild, emotional minds could have conceived. "Amy," Jake said, "can you overload our engine core?" Amy looked shocked. "Captain, that would destroy the ship, and us with it. Not if we time it right. Could ram one of their big ships and take it out with us." Through the mental network, Jake felt the dragon's horror at the idea. To them, the thought of deliberately sacrificing yourself was alien and terrifying. But Don Parker understood immediately. "Actually, boss, we might not have to die. If we aim for their engine section and bail out in the escape pods at the last second, the explosion would cripple their main ship," Pete finished. "I can calculate the timing." His mental voice was full of confusion. "You would risk death for a chance to hurt our enemies. Why?" Katie answered for all of them. "'Cause sometimes that's what family does. Protect each other, even if it's dangerous." The word family echoed through the dragon network. Slowly, Jake realized that's what they had become. It's not just humans and dragons working together, but one big family spread across 12 ships and 37 crystal caves. "We do this together," Crystalleth declared. "Old dragons and young dragons and fire-mind humans. Family protects family." The Horizon dove toward the largest Keth warship, while crystal formations moved to support them. Energy beams and projectiles filled the space around them. But somehow they made it through. At the last second, the human crew jumped into escape pods, while their ship slammed into the enemy vessel. The explosion lit up space like a new star. When the light faded, the Keth flagship was drifting dead in space. The remaining enemy ships suddenly seemed much less confident. "First blood to the family," Jake said from his escape pod, and felt 37 dragons and 11 humans agree with fierce joy. The real battle was just beginning. But now they all knew something important. They weren't alone anymore. They had each other. Jake Morrison floated in his escape pod, watching the wreckage of his ship drift past. The Horizon had been his home for 3 years. Now it was scattered pieces of metal spinning through space. But he felt no sadness, only pride.
Ow.
They had hurt the enemy badly. "Everyone okay?" Jake asked over the pod's radio. One by one, his crew reported in. All 12 humans were alive in their escape pods.
Oh, nice.
Through the mental link with the dragons, Jake could feel their relief and amazement. "You survived." The youngest dragon's voice filled their minds with joy. "We felt you disappear and thought the metal ones had killed our fire friends. It takes more than that to stop humans." Katie Bell laughed from her pod, but the celebration was short. 19 Keth warships were still attacking the crystal planet. The dragons were fighting back with everything they had, but the enemy had too many ships and too many weapons. "Crystalleth is hurt," Azureth reported through the mental link. "The metal ones hit his crystal cave with their big guns. He still lives, but he cannot fight anymore." Jake watched the battle on his pod's small screen. Crystal formations were fighting like living things, but chunks of them were being blown away by Keth's weapons. For every enemy ship they damaged, the dragons lost part of their crystal home. "We need to do something," Dan Parker said from his pod. "The dragons can't win this alone." Amy Watson's voice came over the radio. "Captain, I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "I like crazy ideas," Jake said. "What have you got?" "The dragons said their power comes from connecting with living minds, right? And our emotions make them stronger. What if we could connect them with more human minds?" Lisa Hayes understood first. "The Keth ships. They must have captured humans from other attacks. If we could reach those prisoners." Jake felt excitement building in the mental network. The dragons were listening to the human conversation, and they were getting excited too. "Can we do that?" Jake asked. Reach human minds inside Keth's ships. The metal ones always take prisoners, said another dragon voice, old and sad. They study living minds before they harvest them. There could be hundreds of humans in those ships. Amy's voice was full of determination. If we boost our signal enough, and if the dragons help us reach out, we might be able to connect with human prisoners across the entire fleet. Do it, Jake ordered. All pods, link up. We're going to save everyone we can. The 12 escape pods moved closer together. Amy worked with the communication equipment in her pod, while the dragons focused their power. Slowly, carefully, they reached out across space toward the Keth ships. At first, there was nothing. Then, faintly, Jake felt something. Fear, despair. The emotions of humans trapped in metal cages, waiting to die. Jake called out through the mental link. This is Captain Jake Morrison. Can anyone hear me? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of human voices crying out in hope and disbelief. Someone's there. We're not alone. Help us. Please, we've been prisoners for months. There are children here. They took children. Jake felt anger burn through the dragon network. The dragons had thought the Keth only hunted adult minds. Learning that the metal monsters also captured human children made every dragon furious. We're coming for you, Jake promised the prisoners. Dragons and humans together. Hold on just a little longer. But even with more human minds in the network, they were still outnumbered. The Keth ships kept firing. More crystal formations were destroyed. Some of the dragon families were forced to abandon their homes and flee deeper into the planet. That's when the youngest dragon had an idea that only a child could think of. What if we asked the crystals for help? Her sweet voice suggested. One tent, dubbed, the tet, ter. What a love to dub dun dud. What a lupst are stubbed one. Cupter. I'm stub stadala. I'm stadud. What do you mean? Jake asked. The crystals? They're not alive like us, but they've been here for millions of years. They've seen everything. What if they remember how to fight? The adult dragons were puzzled by the idea. But Azureth trusted her daughter. Show us what you mean, little one. The youngest dragon reached out with her power, not to shape the crystals, but to listen to them. And deep in the crystal formations, she found something amazing: memories. The crystals had been recording everything that happened around them for eons. They remember the old wars. The young dragon announced excitedly. When the first dragon people fought the metal invaders long ago, the crystals learned how to help. Suddenly, the entire planet began to change. The crystal formations weren't just moving now, they were thinking. Ancient memories awakened. Crystal that had slept for millions of years came alive with purpose. The Keth ships found themselves facing an enemy they had never imagined. The planet itself was fighting them. Crystal spears shot up from the surface to pierce ship hulls. Energy fields, stored in crystal for ages, erupted to fry enemy electronics. Impossible, came a mechanical voice from the Keth flagship. Planetary defense systems were not detected. This does not compute. Jake laughed. Not fighting defense systems. You're fighting memories. And crystals have very long memories. The tide of battle turned quickly after that. With the awakened crystals helping, the dragons could focus their power on rescuing the human prisoners. Crystal formations grew out into space like giant hands, gently plucking escape pods and prisoner compartments from damaged Keth ships. Each group of rescued humans added their voices to the mental network. Soon, over 300 human minds were connected with 37 dragons and an entire planet of living crystal. The Keth fleet began to retreat. Their ships were damaged, their prisoners were escaping, and they faced an enemy that their computers couldn't understand or predict. Let them go, Crystaleth advised. They will not return. The metal ones fear what they cannot control, and they cannot control the power of family. Jake watched the last Keth ship disappear into hyperspace. Around him, his crew members were being picked up by crystal formations that carried them gently down to the planet's surface. When Jake's feet touched the crystal ground of Azereth's home, he was amazed by what he saw. The cavern was even more beautiful than he had imagined. But the real wonder was the 3 baby dragons who rushed over to greet him. They were smaller than he expected, only about twice his height. Their crystal scales sparkled with their own inner light. But it was their eyes that captured him, large, intelligent, and full of the same joy he saw in human children. "Fire Brother Jake," the youngest dragon said, nuzzling against him like a friendly cat, "came to save us, and we saved you too." Jake hugged the young dragon's neck, feeling the warmth of her crystal scales. "Yes, we did. We saved each other." Katie Bell was surrounded by all 3 young dragons, who seemed to consider her their favorite human sister. Don Parker was deep in conversation with Azereth about defense plans. Amy Watson was examining crystal technology with the curiosity of a true engineer. "So what happens now?" Lisa Hayes asked. Jake looked around at the mixed group of humans and dragons. Some of the rescued prisoners were scientists who were already fascinated by dragon culture. Others were families with children who had quickly made friends with the young dragons. "Now we build something new," Jake said. "A place where humans and dragons live together, where children from both species can grow up as friends." The youngest dragon looked up at him with bright eyes. "Will you stay with us, Fire Brother? You be part of our family?" Jake smiled. "For as long as you'll have us, little star. Family sticks together." Years later, when other species asked how humans and dragons became such close allies, the answer was always simple. It started with 12 humans who couldn't stand to see children in danger. It continued with dragons who learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the wildest hearts. And it succeeded because everyone involved understood one basic truth. Family isn't about what species you are or where you come from. Family is about who stands with you when things get dark, who celebrates with you when the light returns. The crystal planet became a beacon of hope in the galaxy, a place where different species worked together, where children played among crystal gardens that sang with ancient songs, and where the word family meant something bigger than anyone had imagined before. The Keth Collective updated their files with a new warning: avoid systems containing human-dragon partnerships. Emotional resonance disrupts all standard combat protocols. Recommend immediate retreat if crystalline life forms detected. But for Jake Morrison and his crew, for Azereth and her children, and for all the families that came after, the warning was really a promise. A promise that love and courage and stubborn determination to protect the innocent would always be stronger than cold, metal, and calculating machines. And in the crystal caverns, where human laughter mixed with dragon song, that promise lived on forever.